Now on to our next talk. So our next speaker is Mr. Medhat Kandil, AI engineer at Reso, presenting AI-powered research accelerating public sector transformation on MENA region. Through case studies and national AI initiatives, Mr. Medhat will show how generative AI is enabling governments to make faster, smarter, and more transparent decisions. Please, let's all give a warm welcome to Mr. Medhat Kandil.
Thank you very much. So, as she said, I'm Medhat Kandil, and I work as an AI engineer at Reso. Today I'm going to be talking to you about AI-powered research and how it's accelerating the public sector transformation in the MENA region. So, a bit about me. I started my career in AI with my bachelor's in computer science, which I finished in the Netherlands. Studied at a university there called the University of Groningen, where I worked a bit as a research assistant with a group of professors that were classifying some diseases called neurodegenerative diseases. These diseases are diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. And this was my first real encounter with machine learning, and which sparked my interest in starting a career in AI. Then I came back to Egypt after finishing my studies, and I went to Sequence Ventures, which is a venture capital. For those who don't know, venture capitals are the firms that invest in startups. So this is a deep tech venture capital which invests in startups in the deep tech sector like AI, biotechnology, blockchain, and more. And when I was working there, I used to do technology due diligence for startups to see if they really align with our investment thesis. Then I had a short stint in their own venture studio where they create companies and try to fund them. So we worked there. I used to do some ideation, some prototyping, and some MVP development for AI technology-based startups. And finally, I went to Content Square before going to Reso, where I work right now. And Content Square was a company that does customer experience analytics for some of the most renowned companies in the world, like Microsoft and LVMH. Worked there for a few months before going to Reso, my current company. And so a bit about Reso. Reso is a market research firm that is headquartered in Bahrain. They serve consulting firms, businesses, banks, but most prominently governmental entities in the GCC region. So what do we do there? Reso is not just offering traditional market research solutions, but instead it's working on high impact solutions for high impact clients in the GCC region, such as the PIF, for example, and the sovereign funds of Middle Eastern countries. So they serve them by giving them benchmarking studies on different policies, best practice identification on what other countries do to become better in many different stuff, and competitive analysis and industry landscaping on different industries and sectors. We also do executive profiling and organizational profiling, which is trying to look at a certain entity and give all the information about this entity. What do I do at Reso? So why does a market research firm need AI engineers? So our team in Reso, we work on developing generative AI solutions that would help streamline and make the research process more effective. This is by employing generative AI, and namely large language models, and employing RAG frameworks and agentic frameworks to create better solutions that are not available in the market and that would streamline our work and make it more effective. So how does AI-powered research transform the public sector research sector? So basically we use advanced generative AI frameworks and technologies, and namely 3 of these technologies are instrumental in the transformation of LLMs into AI-powered research solutions. And those 3 main technologies are fine-tuning LLMs, retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG in short, and agentic AI. So first thing, fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is basically, for those who don't know, it's the idea of making your LLM a domain expert in a certain sector or domain. So basically what you do in fine-tuning is you take a model that has been pre-trained and you retrain it on sector-specific data in order for it to be an expert in this sector. And this is done by curating a data set that is really, really focusing on this sector in order to make sure that your LLM would be specific for it. However, the problems with fine-tuning is that it's very costly and it's very time-consuming. So you have to have a very specific use case to go to fine-tuning, something like, for example, chemistry, something like financial systems, something that wouldn't be very represented in the normal data sets that companies like Meta, for example, would use in pre-training their own LLMs. Then there is RAG. RAG is a bit more known than fine-tuning, and it's basically mixing retrieval from knowledge sources with the generation part of generative AI. So basically, generative AI traditionally you would ask an LLM a question, and it would answer using its predictive features. However, when you mix retrieval with it, you can put your LLM in the center of your knowledge sources and try your best to, once you ask your LLM a question, it would go back to your knowledge sources and pull the information from your data sources, and the generative AI or LLM application would answer using the context that it received from the retrieval knowledge base. However, the problem with RAG in general is that you rely very much on retrieval, and if your retrieval mechanism isn't good enough and you haven't invested enough in it, then you would have low quality of data. However, the benefit you get from RAG is that you can really have a curated real-time prediction model with your LLM. So basically, if you're at a company and you have inventory, for example, and you want to know how much inventory of a certain item you'd have from a certain item, and you want to know, for example, how many of these items are left, you can ask the LLM, and then the LLM would go to your knowledge source and check how much of this item is left in inventory, give it back to the LLM, and answer you with a question that would be up to date in real time with your own inventory knowledge base. The final thing and the most interesting one to me is agentic AI, which is becoming a buzzword at the current moment. And agentic AI is basically giving, in a very simplified manner, giving your LLM a decision-making engine, a toolbox, and a role. So how you would do that is you'd basically give your LLM a role by giving it a system prompt and giving it many instructions and on what to do and what to not do, and also appending this with a toolbox. So for example, if you're at a company and you want to create an agent that will, for example, do mathematical work, so if it's a math agent, for example, and you want to give it some tools, you'd give it basically a function that does summing, a function that does subtraction, another function that does multiplication, and you give it a decision-making engine. So you tell it whenever the user has a problem that you deduct that he needs to do addition to solve this problem, you would use the tool for addition. And this is how, in a very simplified manner, agentic AI works. And the very good thing about agentic AI is that it streamlines workflows that couldn't have been automated before, and automates it in a very modern manner. But why is research critical for policy and strategy? Why do governments really need reforms and really need to think about research in the few past years? So we've seen countries like Saudi and UAE and Qatar, they've been spending a lot of work and effort and money in reforming their countries to make their structure less dependent on petrol and less dependent on what they actually do at the moment. So governments are restructuring their whole they're restructuring the whole instruments of generating revenue, and they need a lot of research to get to the best decision-making processes. So to do that, they have been employing many companies like ours, for example, to create research on very specific items that are very hard to find and very scattered around different knowledge bases and different sources around the world. So AI is helping with this by restructuring intelligence to make strategic decisions. And the idea of traditional research being very manual and slow and often unstructured makes it very helpful for AI to enable scalability and precision and real-time insights. So what are the key areas where AI is actually enhancing this research processes for public sector organizations and entities? First of all, we have structured data collection on entities, which is basically when a government or a public sector entity gives you a list of criteria that they need to find entities or companies that fit, and you use AI in order to streamline this process and collect a table of all these structured, like a structured table of all these companies or entities that fit the criteria that you've gotten from your client. The second thing would be comprehensive profiling, where you basically need to understand everything about a certain person or a certain entity or a certain company in order to give the stakeholder a glimpse of what they are like, so that when they meet them, they can perform better in their meeting. Third of all is the policy research and best practice identification, in which you use AI to help your stakeholder understand what are the best practices that nations, governments, or entities are employing to become the best at something, so that they can mimic them and even do better than them. And finally, there's sentiment analysis and for governments and policy insights. Basically, this means gauging the sentiment of your public regarding yourself. So if there's a candidate, for example, for a certain election, and he wants to know what the public feels about him, he can use sentiment analysis to understand how people are feeling about it. So let's start with AI for structured entity research. So the challenges of this, of getting structured information about certain entities that fit a certain criteria, would be that manual research is very slow, and it's very hard to get information from dispersed knowledge sources in order to gain this information. However, by using automated web scraping, LLM-powered criteria matching, and RAG-enhanced search tools, you can easily create a table or a structured file that has all the information on certain entities that fit the criteria that you're looking for in a matter of minutes instead of a matter of weeks. Secondly, there's AI for comprehensive profiling of companies, organizations, and individuals. So imagine you're a person and you need you're a government official, for example, and you need to meet with 12 executives in a certain week. And you want to know what these individuals look like and what you can talk about during the meeting, and what for them could be a bad topic to talk about. You also want to know what their career looked like and what their background looked like. So you do a comprehensive profile about this individual. And the problem with doing this normally would be that it's very hard to access information about these individuals. However, if you employ AI and use collection of information about this entity or this person, you can create a profile in a matter of minutes using graph-based entity linking, automated profile generation, and the thing that is really solvable using AI is identity disambiguation, where if two people, for example, have the same name and work at the same company, AI can be used in order to help you identify who this person is and not take the wrong information about the other person with the same name. Third, there is AI for policy research and best practice identification. So the problem with policy research is that you need to learn to read vast amounts of data in order to get an idea of what these policies that you want to create for policymakers look like. And the problem with that is that it's very time consuming and prone to error. And using LLMs, you can instead consult different data sources from around the world and train it and fine-tune it on policy documents in order for it to comprehend the policy documents clearly and create strategic decisions regarding these policies. Finally, there's AI for sentiment analysis on governments and policy perception around the world. So imagine you're a government as well, and you've identified a new initiative and you started creating this initiative around your country, and you want to know what the people, the public in general, is thinking about this initiative. This would be one of the use cases where you can use sentiment analysis to understand what your public is actually feeling about the certain initiative that you've employed. So let's look at some of the countries in the MENA region that have employed AI in order to create more effective solutions for their work. So first of all, there is Qatar, who have invested in February 2025 to enter a 5-year agreement with a company called Scale AI in order to develop over 50 AI applications that will be tailored for various governmental functions. And by doing this, Qatar has been established as a leader in AI adoption and is going to streamline a lot of their governmental operations. Secondly, there is UAE with their pioneering in AI development. They have created a national strategy for AI to be done by 2031, where they're going to be a 100% AI-driven government. They've also developed the Falcon model, which is an LLM that have beaten all LLMs in the world in the Arabic language, and have actually approached this by demonstrating that the effectiveness of planning and investing in something like AI would put them as a leader. Finally, there is there is Saudi ministries who have been using AI in sentiment analysis around the world for a few years now. All these Saudi ministries have been employing companies to create sentiment analysis for them, in order for them to have informed policy adjustments and create policy adjustments whenever they feel that their public doesn't gauge well or doesn't feel well about the initiatives or the policies they've put. So what does the future of public sector research look like, and how is AI going to transform it? So basically, currently the transition from traditional data analysis is making the idea of research less useful, because as we've seen, companies like Google and OpenAI have created deep researchers that are taking the research industry by storm. And for this, we have seen a lot of companies that were employing, and public sector entities that have been employing companies to do their research for them, going instead to the direction of using AI. And this is going to benefit them by improving accuracy and depth in policy analysis and policy research in the coming future. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please.
We would love to thank Mr. Medhat Kandil for his very fruitful discussion, and we would love to wrap up this, of course, with a certificate of recognition. If you could please welcome us on stage. Thank you so much.